nurse, Charles Cullen worked at multiple hospitals over the course of 16 years. He was well liked by some and respected by others. But his co-workers were starting to notice some disturbing patterns of behavior. There were also 2 deaths that he was involved in that neither of them could explain. These cases would be unsolved until one nurse decided to take matters into her own hands. This is the story of Charles Cullen, and how his plan to get away with murder started falling apart because of one nurse who wasn't afraid to call him out. The story starts with Charles Cullen working at the Beth Israel Hospital in New Jersey. It's 2003, and while he seems like a dedicated nurse, there are some problems. Charles had been written up numerous times for his work at other hospitals. He was known for being unprepared, having equipment malfunctions, and giving patients the wrong medication. Yet somehow this guy just kept getting hired, and no one thought it was strange to hire a man who was clearly so incompetent. They should have done their due diligence, but they didn't. There was also the case of 2 patients that died under very mysterious circumstances. One patient was found dead after receiving an injection from Cullen, and another patient died shortly after Cullen was taking care of them. Nobody thought much of it at the time, and the hospital never even bothered to investigate these deaths. If only they did, maybe things would have turned out very differently. But moving on, we meet the character that will help bring down this serial killer, Amy Lohgren. She's a nurse who works a night shift alongside Cullen. And even though she's only been working there for 3 months, she's already growing sick of his demeanor. Not only does she find him to be lazy and irresponsible, but she also finds his attitude to be unprofessional and borderline rude. She's not the only one either. Most nurses dislike him, but they do seem to like Dr. Adam Paganoni, who also works the night shift. One day, Charles asks Amy if she wants to hang out sometime. She refuses, which makes Charles angry, and he lashes out at her. Even though she rejects his advances, Charles continues to pursue her. One day he gives her a pair of earrings, and Amy feels obligated to accept them. But this is really just the beginning of a very complicated relationship. And speaking of complicated relationships, let's talk about how many people fall for narcissists. Whether it's family members, romantic partners, or co-workers, sometimes we can't see the red flags in someone because they know how to hide them. The problem is that when those red flags eventually show themselves, it's too late and we end up getting hurt. That's why it's important to try to spot those red flags early. Let's jump back into it. A few weeks later, one of the hospital's nurses passes away from cancer. At the funeral, Amy runs into one of the hospital's doctors and mentions how odd it was that 2 patients died under Cullen's supervision. This doctor tells her that he doesn't know what's going on, but he does agree that something weird is happening. However, neither of them knows just how weird it actually is. In the following days, Amy becomes more suspicious of Cullen's behavior. She witnesses him leaving nurses' stations unattended, tampering with IV bags, and even stealing pain medication. Once she even sees him secretly slip something into a patient's IV bag. Although she never sees what it is, she does become suspicious. Just to make sure, she checks the patient's chart and discovers that the medication he just slipped into the IV bag isn't even listed on the patient's orders. She confronts Charles about it, but he denies doing anything wrong. Despite all of this, Amy decides that she needs more proof before she can accuse Charles of doing anything, so she begins secretly documenting all of his behavior. One day, she even sneaks into his locker and discovers several empty vials of medication. Amy decides to take matters into her own hands and contacts the police. She tells them everything that she's witnessed, and they agree to set up a sting operation. An undercover cop calls Amy posing as a concerned citizen. He tells her that he received an anonymous tip that there's a nurse at the hospital that has been tampering with patients' medication. Amy directs him to Charles, and this undercover cop confronts him. Although he tries to play dumb, it's obvious that he knows what they're talking about. He admits that he tampered with the medication, but he claims that he was doing it to help the patients. The undercover cop buys his story and lets him go, but he hands him his card in case anyone else comes forward with any information. Amy knows that she needs to get closer to Charles if she wants to collect more evidence against him. She begins flirting with him, and he falls for it. As their relationship progresses, she continues to document his behavior and looks for opportunities to frame him for more crimes. All the while, she also keeps the police updated. During all this, Charles is still acting very suspiciously. He can't sleep, and he's always looking over his shoulder. It's clear that he's worried that someone is watching him, and to be honest, he should be. Finally, Amy and Charles start spending time outside the hospital, and they even share a kiss. During this time, Amy begins to feel guilty about what she's doing. On top of that, she realizes that Charles may actually be dangerous. She sees him lash out at a motorist and he even threatens to kill her. But she still wants to get him arrested, so she plays along. Charles invites Amy to his apartment so that they can spend the night together. But little does he know, the police have bugged his apartment. Amy sneaks around the apartment looking for incriminating evidence and she finds plenty. She discovers a large amount of cash, hospital staff badges, and several empty medication bottles. The police listen in as Charles falls asleep and they find enough evidence to get a warrant. The next morning, Charles wakes up to find a swarm of cops in his apartment. They arrest him and they charge him with 29 counts of murder. In reality, he's responsible for over 30 deaths, but he was only convicted for the ones that they had evidence for. After his arrest, Amy is interviewed about her experience. She explains that she was drawn to Charles because he reminded her of a client that she had at her previous job. This client had taken several nurses to court, and Amy wanted to figure out why. After meeting Charles, she soon discovered that he had a lot of similarities to this former client. Like him, Charles was defensive, paranoid, and quick to blame others. Amy grew suspicious of him and decided to look into his past. She discovered that he had a history of malpractice lawsuits and medical board complaints. And that's when she decided to take action. In the interview, Amy says, "I think he felt he was God and he could do whatever he wanted." Now, although Amy helped put Cullen behind bars, she refused to call him a mercy killer. She said he wasn't killing people out of mercy. He was killing people because he enjoyed it and he wanted to be godlike. As for Charles Cullen, he's currently serving 11 consecutive life sentences. Although Amy helped bring him to justice, it wasn't easy. She lost many friends in the process. In fact, after she went public with her story, she was shunned by most of her colleagues. She understood that her relationship with Charles made her an accessory to his crimes, and they couldn't look past that. Some even claimed that she had mental problems, saying, "You don't send a crazy person to catch a crazy person." To this day, she remains estranged from the nursing community. However, in 2012, she received an award from the New Jersey State Bar Association for helping to convict Cullen. Now, whether you think Amy was right to frame Charles or not, one thing is certain. Without her, he might have never been caught. Sure, the hospital should have investigated the deaths that happened under his supervision, and the police should have believed him when he first confessed. But the truth is that Amy put herself on the line to help stop this killer. She deserves some credit for that. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I've been your host. Thanks for watching and stay safe.